Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar titled Understanding Made in Italy with Riccardo Illy. We have the pleasure today of having Riccardo Illy and Professor Nicoletta Pireddu, Professor of Italian and Comparative Literature, and also here at Georgetown, and also inaugural director of the Georgetown Humanities Initiative. Thank you for being here. Thank you, the audience. I thank you, our co-host, Nicoletta Pireddu and Mr. Illy. You can unmute yourself if you want to.
Thank you, Donatella, and I join you in welcoming Dr. Riccardo Illy. It's a real pleasure to have him with us. Also, as our semester gets to a close, both of us are offering courses that deal with the Made in Italy, focusing on fashion, on food, and so this is the perfect way to authenticate the sort of trajectory that we are trying to follow in our respective classes. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicoletta. We're going to start our webinar, and I will introduce Mr. Illy, Riccardo Illy. He is the chairman of Polo del Gusto, the Gruppo Illy holding company for their non-coffee businesses, with controlling interests in a number of world-class producers of chocolate, tea, wine, and confections. He first joined Illy Cafe in 1977 to help reorganize the company's commercial structure. In the 80s, he worked to produce Illy Cafe flagship blend. In 1992, he became Illy Cafe CEO. In 1994, vice chairman, and in 2004, chairman of Gruppo Illy. Aside from his business, he also had an extensive political career. He was mayor of Trieste from 1993 to 2001, and then a member of the Italian Parliament, president of the Friuli Venezia Giulia region, president of the Assembly of European Regions. He lectured at prestigious schools around the world, and he is the academic director at Italia Innovation, an organization which fosters research, education, and new ventures in the manufacturing economy with a humanistic approach. Welcome, Mr. Illy. We look forward to to interview you and get your information about the book you published and of course, more information about Made in Italy.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting me at your webinar.
Thank you. So we're going to get started. I'm going to ask my first question. Can you tell us how your family, its values, but also your cultural background impacted your vision as a businessman?
I would say very much, because my grandfather started the company producing coffee and chocolate at that time in 1993. He was born in Temesvar, which used to be a Hungarian city. Now it is in Romania. And his aim when he founded his company was to produce the best coffee in the world. So I always lived, I only met my grandfather when I was very young. He died when I was 1. And then he, let's say, passed his passion for coffee to my father, who was a chemist who put the science in enhancing the quality of coffee. And so I lived all my life in quality at home, but also in a wonderful city, Trieste, which is a sea harbor. It is a city of pre-Roman origins. We still have a wonderful Roman theater, which has about 5,000 seats. And that means that the city had about 50,000 people 2,000 years ago. So it was a huge city on the sea. But when the sky is so clean, we can even see the mountains. And from Trieste, you can drive in about 1.5 hours and go skiing. So you pass from the sea to the mountain to the ski slope and you can ski. So, and the environment is wonderful. You have a full plateau surrounding the city called the Karst, where you can go walking or riding with a horse. And so beauty always surrounded me also outside the family house.
Okay, thank you. We will go back to the concept of beauty later during this webinar, Beauty in Made in Italy and Business. And now let's talk about your book. You wrote The Art of Excellent Products. Why did you write it and why now?
The idea came after organizing two summer schools and one winter program. The summer school lasted 3 weeks and the winter program just 2, with Italian Innovation that asked me to design this program. And the first name was Disruptive Quality. So trying to explain how the Italian companies are producing such excellent products. And we had partially lessons in the class and partially visit to companies where the students coming from the best university in the world, also Stanford and Harvard to say, but also Chinese, Singaporean universities, could see in these companies how what I was telling them as a theory was put in practice. And so they could see wonderful companies like Zegna producing clothes, or Riva 1920 produces unbelievable furniture, or Domori, which is our chocolate company, producing food. Also wineries. We went at Ornellaia, for example. I will talk about in the book. So I had quite a lot of materials, and the two guys, very young guys, Marco and Carlotta, that are managing Italian Innovation, after the third course, asked me, why don't you write a book? They knew that I already wrote some books in the past, that I am a journalist. And I said, yeah, that's a good idea. And why now? Because this is, I think, a magic moment for Made in Italy. If you go in the main cities worldwide and you ask which are the best restaurants, probably 1/2 of the first 10 will be Italians. The best food is considered the Italian one. The wines, the Italian ones are reaching and sometimes even overcoming the French one that were considered the very best. And then fashion, furniture. Thanks also to the pandemic and the following economic crisis, we had a kind of concentration of companies in Italy. And so the ones that remained are stronger, bigger, and they are exporting much more than when they were smaller in the past did. So it's a magic moment. So I thought the right moment to write a book.
Okay, and so, and who's your audience?
My audit initially was just, let's say, universities and business school. But then the publisher said, but these are items that can be interesting also for the consumer. So don't write a book too technical, let's say. Write it in a way that it can be understandable by everybody who is interested in quality, of course, and possibly in the Italian production. So the objective is to, let's say, get curious the consumer and give him also more information of top quality products made in Italy, but also on how they are produced and which is the spirit, the culture, the values that are under these excellent production. Then to give some ideas and information to students and also managers and why not entrepreneurs attending courses in the business school. And I would say, why not also inspiring some of them? because nowadays competing in the big markets where, for example, the technological innovation is fundamental, but where you need million and million, and in the pharmaceutical, for example, billions and billions to get a new product, it's difficult for a small company. But entering in the business of top quality products, I call them Incanto products, can be the right way to start with a small business and then growing it up. Just to give you a number, last year, Illy Cafe sales were over $500 million, and Illy Cafe is exporting in about 145 countries. But all the companies of Polo del Gusto, the extra coffee businesses together, are about 100 million sales, and we just started, let's say, 16 years ago.
Okay, thank you. So going back to your book and what I define your cultural background, in your book you talk about fundamental elements. We're talking about you talk about concept and values that are relevant to Made in Italy. And I'm referring to what you say about heritage, coherence, patience. These are all characteristics of the business, the way you define. So can you tell us how important these elements are not only in life, but also in business?
They are important in life, as you mentioned, because if we are not coherent, if you do not have patience, we probably sooner or later will got in troubles, at least in their relationship with other peoples. But in the business, in particular, if you want to produce top quality goods, they are fundamental. So I just make some examples. At Domori, we buy the very best species of cocoa, and we even produce it because it's a very rare production. It's very difficult to find lots of Criollo cocoa. So we have 2 plantations in Venezuela and in Ecuador. But after you have the best raw material, in this case, cocoa, you have also to process it, so to protect the best taste and especially the flavor of this cocoa. So we use a completely different process. Instead of grinding, refining, and conching, we do this 3 operations in just one with a single machine called a ball mill, and it will last less, and we do it at a lower temperature so to protect the best flavors. And then again, for coherence, we do not need to add other ingredients than cocoa and cane sugar. So we don't use cocoa butter, which is like adding water to the wine. We don't use soy lecithin because it is not necessary. We do not add any other flavor to our chocolate. So we don't use even vanilla or vanillin. This is coherence. About patience, our winery, Mastroianni, is based in Montalcino. And if we plant a new vineyard this year, we will get the first crop in 5 years, and then we will be able to sell these bottles after additional 5 years. So totally 10 years. Imagine the patience you need if you are in the wine business. So you have to be ready to wait even 10 years after your investment to get the first revenues. But generally speaking about quality, you need the patience of first of all, producing the very best good you are able to produce, then starting selling it, then training your consumers and explaining how the quality of your goods is made. So explaining the story of your company, the kind of process you are using, the raw material. So you have a lot of telling. I remember some year ago, in the years 80s, when I was developing the sales at Illy Cafe, I started writing articles on a magazine that was distributed to the Horeca customers. And then I wrote a book on coffee, because I understood that to let the quality of our coffee be perfectly understood, we needed to, let's say, train the consumer, to educate him on what coffee really meant. And now I'm doing the same with cocoa and chocolate, with tea, with wine. I just came in the afternoon from Vinitel, which is the most important exhibition for wines worldwide. I met many Americans, buyers or restaurant owners or sommelier, and every time they come and taste our wines, we tell them the story of how these wines are produced. So it takes a lot of time. You have to be patient.
Mm-hmm. And this is very important information for a person who wants to start a business. These are key features. Okay, so thank you so much. I'm going to pass the floor to Professor Riccardo. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is the perfect connection, these values that are connoting a certain approach to how Italy can present itself through its products. And so I would like to focus on precisely the notion of made in Italy, which is crucial in your book, of course. It depicts a national culture. It conveys a specific sense of nationness. And at some point in history, we might even say of nationalism, if we think of the very distorted and dangerous way in which, for instance, Mussolini co-opted the idea of making things in the homeland, his notorious autarky, but hopefully this is just a scary parenthesis. But Italy, as you rightly observe in your book, is a country composed of regions, right? And each region has its own character, its rich history, specific products, specific flavors. You come from a fascinating and indeed much contested border town, Trieste, at the heart of Mitteleuropa, but also a Mediterranean port, a crossroads of languages, of cultures, of ethnicities. And so I'm wondering, what does made in Italy mean from Trieste? Is there any feature that, in your view, for instance, makes it unique with respect to other more, let's say, iconically Italian places, such as Florence, Milan, or Rome?
You are right, Trieste is a kind of melting pot. So imagine we have several populations living in Trieste, not only Italian, German, Austrian, Hungarian, but also Slovenian, Croatian, Serbs, Greeks, Turks. We have church of 7 different religions and graves as well. And any case, Trieste is of Roman origins, and we do not forget this. And so the Italian values that we inherited by the Romans, and especially the love for beauty and for good products, is still very, very much present. Imagine that where I am living now and where I'm speaking from is a small village called Prosecco, which is the name that allowed Italy to save the name of its sparkling wine, but it's also a place where 2000 years ago, the Romans were farming glera, which is the variety of grape, exactly this one, used for Prosecco. So in this city, the, let's say, Roman and Italian roots are very strong, even if we were once under the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then during the war for 50 days, the city was dominated by the Yugoslavian army, and happened terrible thing in these days. And then for 9 years, Trieste was administered by the Allied government. So Americans, British, and if I remember well, Australian as well. But any case, the original roots were never forgotten. And the advantage we have in Italy is that we feel Italian, of course, but we know that the beauties, the good products we are able to produce in Italy are interesting also for all the other population living in other countries. And staying on the sea, we have, of course, many shipping lines that are bringing in our port, in our city, but then allows us to ship all these goods almost all over the world. So staying in Trieste gives you the openness, the open mind, the idea that you are able to reach whatever the country with the wonderful Italian products.
Thank you. It's an excellent synergy of the local and the global, right? And this ties up with what I would like to ask you, thinking of most of the key elements that in your book you associate with Made in Italy, perfection, beauty, starting with your own family business and the Illy group as an extension of it. I appreciated how you managed to intertwine these observations about Italian business with Italian memories, many of them very personal. I grew up in Verona, so when you start talking about the Dolomiti and the Pizza La Isla, etc., so this, obviously makes me very nostalgic. I'm an avid skier as well, and so I identify with those spaces that you describe in your pages, but also Italian charming places that go beyond the north, Italian artistic masterpieces. You refer to Leonardo's Mona Lisa, among many others. And so my question is, what strategies are, in your view, crucial in branding a nation through the excellence of its products, which sell a unique way of life, like people imagine Italianness through the Made in Italy, at a time like our present, when inevitably geographical and cultural boundaries are questioned, when people's lives are informed by hybridity, syncretism, when mobility, but also media, makes us all citizens of the world, travelers, globetrotters. So what strategies are, in your view, unique in conveying, in selling this national image in such a complex world?
When I used to be the mayor of Trieste, I tried to bring all the managerial skills that I had built during the previous year working in the family company, also in the municipality. And after a few years, also the managers of the municipality were calling the municipality itself as common company. So common, the municipality, company, as it was a private company. So the idea was, we are common because we have to serve our citizens, but we have to work effectively and efficiently like a private company. And we did pretty well. I think that also at the national level, we would need some, let's say, additional activities to support the Italian companies that are exporting, and many are doing pretty well, but some of them are too small. We know that we also have a lot of Italian sounding products that are, let's say, challenging our production. And I think that we need a double action, the private one, but also the public one. So the first thing I would do, if I would have any, let's say, national political responsibilities, would be to better defend our flag. I remember in the years 80, soluble espresso and soluble cappuccino produced in the United States with Italian flag. But the flag is like the brand of a company. A company would never accept that a competitor would use its brand. And so Italy shouldn't allow other producers that are not Italian to use the Italian flag. But up till now, we did not that much in impeding that this happens. Secondly, in positive terms, I would introduce a kind of common, let's say, brand for the high quality products, for the authenticity of these products. Authenticity is one of the words I develop in the book. And I think that the most important point is to let the consumer understand which are the really authentic Italian products and which are not. Some years ago, always in the years 80, we first produced a 100% Arabica blend of coffee. Few months later, I got aware that some competitors were labeling their products 100% Arabica, but it wasn't. Instead of suing them at the court, I prefer to get the first certification, quality certification by a French company. It was a product certification saying we certificate that this product is really 100% Arabica. So I think that a similar approach could be used for the authentic Italian products. And this would help the whole Italian production to grow abroad.
Thank you so much. I am going to anticipate one of my questions because you were talking about this authenticity. You're talking about the flag on some Italian products. So my question is, what are the challenges of Made in Italy that Made in Italy is facing right now when with counterfeit products and what they now call Italian sounding, which is similar names, Italian names, but not Italian products, or putting the flag on the products. So how can Made in Italy face and react to these kind of strategies from other markets?
So as I mentioned, first of all, we have to defend our flag. Secondly, to introduce a common brand, and then better use the instrument we have in the European Union, where we have the kind of, for example, EGT, Indicazione Geografica Tipica, which is one of the European certification that we could use. And sometimes for, let's say, smaller interest, the companies are not, let's say, allowing to get this kind of certification. Some decade ago, I proposed to get the certification of the Italian espresso. So we made a meeting with the main roaster company in Italy, and we proposed a quite tight definition of espresso. And one of the companies said, but we are selling a lot of coffee that is prepared with the mocha, you know, the small coffee machine you just put on the flame, on the fire, but which is not producing espresso. And they said, we call this mocha espresso, so we don't want to have such a tight definition. And so finally, nothing were decided. And it was a pity because now we could have a protection of the authentic Italian espresso thanks to this certification, and we don't have it. So there is also something that the company should do, not only the public administration. Sometimes they should overcome their small interest to protect and enhance a bigger interest, which is the interest of the whole country.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, you already presented some of the business philosophy that you call Incanto. Can you tell our audience what Incanto is?
So Incanto is a translation with a better word of disruptive quality. And so it is the highest level of quality you can reach through the best raw material and a process which is normally different, incompatible with the one of the mass market products, with a high, very high commitment in sustainability, or ESG, as you would say today. And these things have to bring to the perception also by non-professional consumers of the higher quality of the product. And this Incanto quality should be able to realize a kind of augmented quality. So Professor Theodore Leavitt, some years ago, in his book Marketing Imagination, wrote that we have 3 levels of quality. The minimum level is the necessary quality. Below that, you wouldn't accept the product. Then you have expected quality, the quality simply expecting by a product you are using or just buying or testing. And then there is augmented quality, a kind of quality that is going to surprise you. You didn't expect. And so you will get surprised because it is better than you could imagine. So Incanto quality is going to satisfy this kind of needs of the people that wants to surprise themselves with an excellent quality of a product.
Thank you so much. So I pass the floor to Nicoletta.
Thank you. This Incanto idea, which in your book evokes also the notion of perfection, right? Makes me think that one element that defines the Made in Italy is the family business, often multi-generational, where the act of making and selling goes hand in hand with a deep personal investment, right? A story to tell, a love for the product, precisely perfection, to use your term, which results from a genuine love for one's work. You even adopted the term fundamentalism in a benign sense to show to what extent this passion, this dedication can go. And indeed, it's a different reality with respect to the work ethics a la Max Weber, for instance. In the US, people work a lot, always, probably more than in Italy, but I don't see the kind of personal investment that you evoke with this idea of perfection. In the US and in other areas of the West, and not even only the West, we have the big chain as the antithesis of the small business, the multinational company that prevails upon the family tradition, goods that are imperfect, if you want, not just in aesthetic terms, but also as a convenient strategy, right? Non-durable, so that consumption and waste can increase. And in my view, this is also a tendency not to ascribe the right value, not in terms of economic value, but really the value, almost the sacredness of the object. So I'm wondering, to what extent do you think that your set of criteria, which are also values, can be adopted by the business culture of other countries?
I think that after satisfying the basic needs, and especially when the average income rises, people are more interested in quality than in quantity. So slowly, they start looking at superior quality. And this is happening all over the world. And the number of people with medium to higher income in the world increased sharply in the last decades. Just imagine in China, we had almost none of them 30 years ago. Now it's estimated that China has about 150 million of wealthy people. So people that are no more interested in buying or eating or doing more, but are interested in dressing, in driving, in making vacation, in eating better. And so I think that the idea that we developed with the Italian culture in our country is of interest also in the rest of the world, at least in the developed countries or the ones that are developing quickly and that already have a good percentage of wealthy people. And the family is the best environment in which this kind of activity can start, because you will have the passion. You didn't use this word, but I think it is well synthesizing what you were saying. The passion is almost normal in a family. And when a member of the family has, of course, the name of the family, which is the same of the brand, his commitment will be simply huge. And then the capability of the family is of looking very far. So it's normal for a family business to think in terms of generation. So to have a span of interest of up to 20 years. And we know that normally a public company is thinking to the next quarter, so 3 months instead of 20 years. But of course, we also have the aim at perfection, which is again a characteristic of the family linked to the passion and to the long-term view. There are also some negative aspects. The most important is that each member of the family thinks he will have the right in the future of becoming a shareholder, and this can be a right in reality, and then to become a manager, and possibly a director, and even the chairman of the company. So if the family business wants to survive the third generation, you know the joke, the third generation incorporate the company, the second developed, and the third destroy it. So if the family business want to survive the third generation, should give itself some rules. And the first rule is you have not the right of becoming a manager or a director, but you have to deserve it, and to deserve it in comparison or in competition, if you prefer, with other managers which are independent, so which are not members of the family. And in Italy, many families like ours or Zegna, but many others, has a kind of family statute where they write all these rules. And when the younger of the new generation arrive to the age of 18 years, they can sign the statute, and so they will be allowed to be put in competition with the external manager and directors, or if they do not sign, one day they will just become a shareholder. So family, if the negative aspects are, let's say, changed or avoided, can be really a very strong example of companies that can grow up to, I cited Zegna. Zegna has more than 1 billion sales, and they have just been listed at the New York Stock Exchange, and not through an IPO, but through a SPAC. So it was a special purpose company that was already listed. They made the acquisition, and so they were incorporated and automatically listed at the stock exchange. So family companies can become big if they establish and follow very strong rules.
Thank you. It's fascinating to see to what extent the family dimension reinforces norms that have to be incorporated, right? You cannot be flexible. You're probably more rigorous, and stronger feelings and stronger norms probably can guarantee this structure that ends up being obviously productive across generations. Thank you.
And so it is extremely important, and we do understand by your answers from what you're saying that a family business carries on some values, and that determines the power, the unicity of made in Italy. And on this respect, we can also say, like on your book, you say that it's also very important to educate, to know the market, first of all, to know the needs of the market, and to have educated consumers. You quote Theodore Levitt by saying, something helps determine from whom they, the customers, will buy, what they will pay, and whether, in the view of the seller, they are loyal or fickle. So can you elaborate on this, please?
Yes, when you are producing Incanto quality and you are trying to surprise the consumer with a higher level of quality, you also need to explain how this quality has been produced. And that's the reason you need this kind of education. And by the way, nowadays we have a powerful instrument to do that, which is the internet and your website, when you can also put movies and slides and photographs, so you can really satisfy your customers also with this kind of more deep information about the raw materials, about the processing, about the products, about the culture of the company, its value. And this will finally give the whole experience to the consumer, and will allow the consumer really to appreciate the higher quality and to get surprised.
Thank you. Nicoletta, do you want to go with your next question?
Sure, if you wish, and then we'll take a look. I see there are also two questions from the audience. So
Right.
maybe my quick question is about what probably made to the eyes of Italian people Illy very famous, right? Coffee. So Illy is now many things, but certainly, you know, Illy Cafe, we all remember the advertisements, not the most iconic item. And so my question is, how has coffee culture changed in Italy in light of its many appropriations and adaptations? Now here, for instance, Starbucks is a big deal. Worldwide, there is, of course, an increasing interest in coffee, and I'm wondering to what extent all these very creative mixtures that we see worldwide have influenced coffee culture in Italy, for instance.
I would say that, first of all, changed the level of knowledge about coffee. 40 years ago, when I was talking to some people and saying there are two species, one is called Coffea Arabica and the other Coffea Canephora, or normally called Robusta, they were astonished, and they almost knew nothing about this, let's say, which is the ABC of coffee. Now, it's quite normal to meet people that perfectly know the difference of the two species, and that are looking for a higher level of quality in the coffee they are buying. Then the espresso that once was, let's say, relegated to the hotel, restaurant, and cafe is spread. You can find it almost in all the homes and almost in all the offices in the places where you work. So there was a shift from another kind of preparation with mocha to the real espresso with a small espresso machine that, by the way, now costs about 1/10 of what they costed 20, 30 years ago. And this is thanks to economy of scale, of new technology, and also related to the diffusion of the system. And also the way the places where coffee is consumed, that we also call cafe has changed. I would say that in the average, the quality improved. And then almost all the cafe now are offering some food, not only the possibility to drink a cup of coffee or to drink soft drinks or wine or beer or what else, and maybe just eating some croissant in the morning. Now it's normal to find something to eat also for lunch, very often also hot dishes and well prepared. So also the kind of offer which you can find in an Italian cafe has changed and has, let's say, increased and improved.
Thank you.
Okay, we can have maybe one more question, and then we can move to the Q&As. My last question is, what is the future of Made in Italy?
I think it's a very positive future because we are living in a magic moment.
That's what you said at the beginning, yeah.
Yes, Italy is, I would say, beloved by the large majority of the population worldwide, because this goes from the Americans to British, German, Chinese, Japanese, so. And I think that we still have a lot of opportunities, both to attract tourists, but also to sell our products, if we will be able to grow, because the important for any company and for any organism is to grow. It's not nice, not beautiful being big, and not beautiful being small. Beautiful is growing. And if we grow, we will be more and more able to export our goods to the majority of the countries all over the world, to give a higher level of satisfaction to the consumer. In the meantime, being committed to sustainability, because all the Incanto companies are really very much committed in sustainability. And that means also they are affecting less the environment with their production.
Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe we have time for another question, and then we move to the Q&A. Professor Melucci opened her introduction to you, emphasizing your experience also in the political domain. And to recap, I just referred to your experience as mayor of Trieste and governor for the region Friuli Venezia Giulia. I'm wondering whether your business background helped you in particular ways in your political role, and or whether vice versa, your political engagement taught you something specific that changed your way of doing business.
Yes, I brought almost all my managerial knowledge in my political experience, and I can say it works. Because first of all, talking about the city of Trieste, which I was the mayor, I was designing a strategy for the city. So the first thing was, which is the mission of Trieste, and it is the city of the science. And it is to integrate the system of population, of knowledges, of languages, of goods, of countries that can meet in Trieste. So these are the two missions of the city. And then we focused all our activities on this strategy coherently, as we were saying before. When I concluded my 15-year commitment in politics, I brought back in the company two main, let's say, values. One is complexity. I learned better to manage complexity. Municipality is guaranteeing to the citizens about 20 different services. and you have to manage an organization able to optimize all these services that goes from democratic services, certificates and so on, to cleaning or lighting the roads, managing the school for the children, and also enhancing the economy, and so enhancing the occupation, the labor in the city. During my 2 terms as a mayor, we passed from more than 10% unemployment down to about 5%. And this thanks to the company, we were able first to save, because some risk to close, to fail, or simply to be closed by the state that were controlling it. And then we were able to attract new companies. So the employment grew. And so complexity is one, and the other is patience. Because also in the companies, you can do things from one day to the other. The idea that to just give orders and your employees will act is a very old idea. You have to explain, you have to convince, to persuade, and then your managers and your employee will act according to the idea you were able to convince them. But in the public administration, it is much worse, because especially in Italy, we have lots of laws that applies only in the public administration. Everything is regulated. Everything is very long. So you have to be patient, but in the meantime, you have always to look at your objective and push so to get it reached. So complexity and patience were the 2 things I learned during my experience in the public administration.
Thank you. Yes, I imagine it hasn't been an easy task to combine the dynamism of a private entrepreneurship with the proverbial stasis of the Italian public sector. So absolutely a lot of patience and hope, I assume, certainly. Thank you. It must have been a rather schizophrenic experience, I imagine. Perfect. Thank you, Donatella. If you want to check whether...
Yes, we can open the Q&A. So our view probably is going to change now. I do see one question. One person is asking if the book is available in Italian. Can you hear me, Mr. Illy?
Yes.
Yes. So one of the questions is your book is available in Italian?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
It's a curious aspect. I wrote a book in English, and it has been published by HarperCollins in the United States. But then the manager of one of the new and fast-growing publisher in Italy, l'Isola di Teseo, her name is Elisabetta Sgarbi, got the information and decided to buy the rights for Italy. And then she called me saying, can you give me the Italian manuscript? And I answered, I don't have it. I just wrote it in English. So she now has to translate it from English to Italian. And it will be published in fall, she says.
So it's coming up.
Yes,
Okay, so people
arrive.
interested. Okay, that's good. There is another question that I see, like somebody's asking if you have children that would take over the family business. It's a personal question, rather. If you have children that would take over your family business.
Yes, I have a daughter, which is not anymore such a children because she is 45. And I have 2 grandchildren. One is 12, Riccardo as me, and the other is 9, Angelica. So Daria used to work at Illy Cafe, and right now she is let's say, changing her job. And other members of the fourth generation are committed in companies of the group. For example, the first daughter of my younger brother, her name is Michaela. She is the managing director of Prestat, which is a company based in London, the first company producing truffles and pralines, founded in 1902 by a French guy, Antoine Dufour. And so she is managing this company and doing well.
Thank you. I don't know if we have just a couple of minutes that maybe we should close, or Nicoletta.
No, I think that there's another question. Let's try to
Go ahead.
it, but yes.
Do you want to ask?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, sure.
So here, it's a reference to your book, defined as a passionate statement on the values rooted in the family business. And the question is, how can the company sustain and protect these values when the company decides to go public and take into account the shareholders' demand?
The first thing you need is to write the values. Normally, these values are just passed from one generation to the other by talking, and the words are not written. At Illy Cafe and also in the other companies, the first thing we did in our third generation was writing the strategy, the mission, the vision, and then the values. We are also helped in Italy by a law which is not mandatory, but is, let's say, suggested in organizing a system to prevent risk. And in this case, you also need to write a paper with the values of the companies. And then you need to put it on the website of the company, and all the employees have to know this paper and the values that are written. I would make the example of Zegna, because Illy Cafe is not yet listed at the stock exchange. It will go to an IPO probably in 3-4 years, because we have a partner, which is an American fund, Round Capital. And the exit of the partner that has 20% of the shares will be represented by the IPO. But for the moment, we are, let's say, private. Zegna just go to the market with a SPAC, and they also have their values written, and they are spread to all the employees and even to the customer, to the supplier. It is also one of the things that is foreseen by the law I mentioned before. When you have your paper, you have to check that also your supplier are following the values, are respecting the values that are in your paper. So I think that if well managed in a managerial way, also the family companies can become big, maintaining, sustaining their value, even if they go public one day or the other.
Thank you very much, Mr. Illy. It was wonderful talking to you. I thank the audience for being with us. I thank Professor Pireddu for co-hosting this webinar. Again, it was wonderful. I thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and all the best for you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.